Sharon Stone wasn't just famous, she was untouchable. Her face, iconic. Her name, synonymous with desire, danger, and brilliance. And in 1992, with one leg-crossing scene in Basic Instinct, she didn't just enter Hollywood royalty, she burned her name into its walls. The world couldn't look away. But just a few years later, it wasn't flashing cameras that surrounded her. It was paramedics. It wasn't adoring fans. It was surgeons, unsure if she'd make it through the night. A brain hemorrhage exploded inside her skull. 9 days of bleeding, her memory wiped clean, her identity fractured. She went from commanding studios to forgetting her own name. While she was trying to survive, the people around her made their own choices. Her husband? Gone. Her son? Taken. Her fortune? Vanished. And Hollywood? The same industry that once begged for her attention? Slammed the door in her face without a second thought. Most people don't come back from that. They disappear quietly, erased not just from the screen, but from memory. But Sharon Stone didn't vanish. She didn't beg. She didn't ask permission. She rebuilt herself, word by word, step by step, stroke by stroke. From the canvas to the courtroom, from the red carpet to the ICU. This is not a comeback story, this is a rebirth, but to understand her resurrection, you have to start at the beginning. Long before the fame, long before the leg cross, back when she was just a little girl in a small Pennsylvania town. Already feeling like the world didn't have a place for someone like her. Sharon Von Stone was born on March 10, 1958, in Meadville, Pennsylvania, a quiet, working-class town where life moved slowly and ambition wasn't part of the vocabulary. Her father, Joseph, worked in a local factory. Her mother, Dorothy, balanced bookkeeping and raising 4 kids. They lived modestly. They lived simply. But Sharon, she wasn't built for simple. She wasn't even walking by one. She was running, not even 2, and she was speaking in full sentences. By the time she took an IQ test in early childhood, the results shocked everyone. 154, genius level, higher than Einstein. The kind of intelligence most people don't encounter, let alone know how to raise. At school, she was brilliant. But brilliance doesn't equal belonging. Other kids didn't admire her mind. They feared it, mocked it. She was the girl who raised her hand too fast, the one who corrected the teacher, the one who read while everyone else played. While her classmates swapped stories about cartoons or crushes, Sharon was reading encyclopedias, analyzing human behavior, dreaming about worlds bigger than Meadville. And that kind of difference? It's dangerous in small towns. They called her a weirdo, a freak, a loner. The ugly duckling who wasn't just awkward, but too smart for her own good. She wasn't just isolated, she was invisible. But even as she fought to fit in outside, inside her home she was battling something far more terrifying, something darker, something no child should ever have to face. Because while the world rejected her for being brilliant, the people closest to her broke her for being powerless. And those scars? They ran deeper than anyone could see. Behind the walls of that quiet home in Meadville, something horrifying was happening. Something Sharon Stone would spend decades trying to forget. Her grandfather, the man the family was supposed to trust, was abusing her. It didn't just happen once, it wasn't an isolated moment. It was a nightmare that unfolded silently, repeatedly over the years. And like many victims, Sharon kept it buried. She had no language to explain what was happening. No one she felt safe enough to tell. He warned her, "If you speak, I'll kill you." So she said nothing. To the outside world, she was just a smart, strange little girl. But inside, she was trapped in a prison with invisible walls. She carried the weight of that trauma into every classroom, every friendship, every quiet night when the fear refused to let her sleep. She learned to live with silence. She learned to bury everything. Not just the memories, but the fear, the confusion, the rage. Years later in therapy, those memories came crashing back. She called them a long-buried nightmare, a truth so devastating that her mind had tried to erase it just to keep her functioning. And then came a moment that twisted the knife even deeper. When her grandfather died, Sharon's grandmother locked her and her sister in a room and forced them to stand over his lifeless body. No words, no explanation, just the cold stare of death, and a silence that screamed louder than anything. That was supposed to be the end of the pain, but her childhood had more cruelty in store. Her father, Joseph, wasn't abusive in the same way, but his violence was no secret. He believed in discipline, and when he was angry, he lashed out. With words, with fists, with power. Sharon lived in fear of him too, until one day, she didn't. At 14 years old, when he was screaming in her face, Sharon didn't back down. She didn't cry, she didn't run. She looked him in the eye and asked him, "Do you need to hit me again to feel like a man?" And just like that, the rage stopped. Her father froze. Then he cried, and he never hit his children again. It was the first time Sharon learned what her voice could do, but it wouldn't be the last time she'd have to use it to survive. Because trauma doesn't just haunt your past, it waits for you. In your bones, in your blood, in every relationship you try to build later. It waits and resurfaces. And just when Sharon thought things couldn't get worse, life reminded her how fragile she really was. When Sharon was 14, she climbed onto a horse expecting peace. She got pain. The horse spooked and bolted. She lost control, slammed forward, and was violently thrown. Her body crashed into a clothesline and then slammed onto the hard ground. Her neck twisted in a way it was never meant to. The damage? Lifelong. Her spinal injury was serious, but not immediately fatal, which almost made it worse. Because the pain never fully left. Years would go by and she'd still feel the tightness in her neck, the soreness in her spine, the reminder that her body could betray her at any time. But she didn't stop. She pushed harder. School had been a battleground, but it also became her escape. She drowned herself in academics, graduating high school at just 15, years ahead of everyone else. And with her test scores and genius IQ, she earned a scholarship to Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. It should have felt like success. Instead, it felt like a trap. Sharon arrived on campus and realized almost immediately she didn't belong. She was too young, too sharp, too emotionally distant. While others partied and made friends, she studied alone. The world of academia didn't inspire her. It suffocated her. She was brilliant, but miserable. And just when it seemed like there was no clear way out, life threw her a curveball, a beauty pageant. Sharon didn't see herself as a beauty queen. She had spent her whole life being told she was too strange, too smart, too awkward. But she entered anyway. And to her shock, she won. It wasn't the crown that mattered, it was what it led to. An invitation to model in New York City, a ticket out of Meadville, out of the pain, out of the small town that never knew what to do with her mind, her voice, or her past. She packed her bags. She left her childhood behind. She thought modeling might be her future. But what she found in New York was another kind of emptiness. New York was everything Sharon Stone thought she wanted. Fast-paced, full of opportunity, bursting with possibility. But once she got there, she realized something terrifying. She was invisible again. Signed to Ford Modeling Agency, one of the biggest in the world, Sharon landed covers, commercial shoots, print campaigns. She was the face of glamour, but she felt like a ghost. The work was silent, mechanical, smile, pose, tilt your head. Again, no voice, no emotion, no identity. It wasn't performance, it was presentation. And for a woman with a brain wired for expression, intellect, and complexity, it felt suffocating. She once said she felt like a coat hanger in designer clothes, beautiful but empty. Her soul wasn't just underused, it was ignored. That's when she decided modeling wouldn't be her ending. It was only a means to break into something bigger. Hollywood. But Los Angeles was colder than New York. Not in temperature, but in heart. She walked into casting rooms filled with other hopefuls and quickly learned the brutal truth. Hollywood didn't care about her intelligence, or her ambition, or her story. They cared about softness, sex appeal, marketability. And Sharon, with her sharp cheekbones, piercing eyes, and unapologetic energy, was seen as too hard, too smart, too intense. Not the kind of woman audiences could fantasize about, not the kind casting directors could imagine beside a leading man. One told her flat out, "You're not sexy enough to be a star." She was rejected again, and again, and again. But she refused to quit. Her first role was almost invisible. A fleeting appearance in Stardust Memories, 1980. No lines, barely any screen time. But to Sharon, it meant everything. She was on a set. She was in the game. More roles followed, B-movies, small thrillers. She played the supporting girl, the background character, the face no one remembered. Deadly blessing. Irreconcilable differences. Tiny cracks in the Hollywood wall. She took every no, every insult, every dismissal, and she filed them away like ammunition. She wasn't waiting for someone to hand her a spotlight. She was building her own, and then she read a script. A psychological thriller. A woman who was magnetic, brilliant, mysterious, and lethal. It was risky, controversial, unpredictable, and it would make her unforgettable. 1992, Basic Instinct hit theaters, and in one moment, Sharon Stone went from "Who's that?" to the most talked-about woman on the planet. She played Catherine Trammell, a seductive, manipulative crime novelist who might also be a murderer. The role was electric, dangerous, sexy, and Sharon didn't just play it, she owned it. The interrogation scene is still one of the most iconic in film history. Catherine, surrounded by detectives, smirks as she toys with their questions. Then, casually, deliberately, she crosses her legs in the other direction, revealing just enough to set the world on fire. The scene was replayed endlessly, paused, analyzed, immortalized. It made Sharon Stone a global sensation, but it also changed her life in a way she never agreed to. According to Sharon, she was never told the camera would capture what it did. Director Paul Verhoeven had asked her to remove her underwear for lighting reasons, promising that nothing explicit would be shown. She believed him. And then, at the first screening, she saw the truth with everyone else. The shot had crossed a line. A moment she had trusted would remain tasteful was now magnified on every screen across the world. She confronted the director, slapped him across the face in a room full of people, called her lawyer, demanded the scene be cut. It wasn't. Verhoeven claimed she knew. Sharon insisted she didn't. That debate still exists. But one thing is undeniable. She was betrayed. And yet, Basic Instinct made her a star. It launched her into a level of fame most actors never reach. She became a sex symbol overnight. Magazine covers, talk shows, awards, scripts, endless offers. But she wasn't being recognized for her talent. She was being objectified for a few seconds of exposure. Seconds she didn't consent to. What should have been her triumph became her trap. She was no longer seen as an actress. She was a fantasy, a symbol, a screenshot. And that role, the one that made her, would haunt her for the rest of her life. After Basic Instinct, Sharon Stone could have coasted on sex symbol status for the rest of her career. Hollywood was ready to keep her in that box, the dangerous blonde with the icy stare and unforgettable body. But Sharon didn't want to be remembered for a few seconds of film. She wanted to prove she was more than desire, she was depth. So she started making choices. No more passive, decorative roles. She turned down scripts that recycled her image. She wanted grit, she wanted heartbreak. She wanted to act. That chance came in 1995 when Martin Scorsese cast her as Ginger McKenna in Casino. Ginger wasn't glamorous, she was tragic, manipulative, broken, raw, a drug-addicted hustler unraveling before the audience's eyes. Sharon threw herself into the role, shedding every trace of Catherine Trammell and bearing something far more vulnerable, herself. The performance stunned critics. She wasn't just sexy, she was searing. For the first time, Hollywood had no choice but to take her seriously. She earned her first Oscar nomination. It should have been the moment everything changed, but instead it only reminded Sharon how fragile everything still was. While her career began to earn respect, her personal life fell apart. Her marriage to television producer Michael Greenberg had already ended in the 80s, but what came after was worse. Public, messy breakups with high-profile men. Dwight Yoakam, a country music star whose relationship with Sharon ended in mutual disdain. She called kissing him like eating a dirt sandwich. He called her emotionally clumsy. Then came a scandalous engagement to producer William J. McDonald, who left his wife for Sharon after just 5 months of marriage. The press branded her a homewrecker. His ex-wife went on TV and called Sharon heartless. It ended quickly. Sharon returned the engagement ring by FedEx. But the most heartbreaking chapter was still ahead. In 1998, she married Phil Bronstein, a respected journalist. This time, it felt different. They adopted a son, Roan, built a home, a family. Sharon finally had the thing she had longed for most, peace. But life doesn't pause just because you want it to. Sharon wanted to carry a child of her own, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Autoimmune disorders and endometriosis made pregnancy impossible. She suffered 9 miscarriages. Each one tore her apart. Still, she kept going, kept acting, kept fighting for normalcy. And then, just as it seemed like she had finally built something permanent, her body betrayed her in a way no one could have predicted. It started with a headache, the kind she thought she could push through. She was in Milan at a fashion show, surrounded by lights, noise, people, but something was wrong. A pressure at the base of her skull, a throb behind her eyes. Back in the US, the pain worsened. Then, one night, it struck like lightning. An explosion behind her eyes. Her vision blurred. Her balance vanished. She collapsed, her head slamming into a piece of furniture on the way down. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. She tried to call for help. No one heard her. Her brain was hemorrhaging, rapidly, violently. Blood pooled in her head, face, and spine. She was rushed to the hospital where doctors told her the truth. She had a 1% chance of survival. She lay in a hospital bed for 9 days, fading in and out of consciousness. She saw death. Not metaphorically, literally. The man in the bed next to her died right in front of her eyes. She felt herself slipping. Light surrounded her. Peace washed over her. She was ready. But then, an image stopped her. Roan. Her son's face. His eyes. His need. She couldn't leave him, and so she fought. She came back to life. But the woman who woke up was not the same one who collapsed. Her memory was shattered. Her speech was broken. Her motor skills damaged. Her body had dropped to 18% muscle mass. She couldn't walk, couldn't write, couldn't remember who she was. Doctors offered no roadmap, no rehab, no plan. She was on her own, so she taught herself to be human again. She stood in front of a mirror, retraining her speech one syllable at a time. She met with neurologists, practiced walking, reading, holding a pen. For 7 long years, she clawed her way back into her body. A Buddhist monk told her, "You have been reincarnated into your own body." And that's exactly how it felt. But just as she started to recover, everything she loved was about to be ripped away. Sharon Stone had survived a brain hemorrhage that nearly killed her. She returned home expecting comfort, stability, a place to heal. Instead, she got divorce papers. Her husband, Phil Bronstein, wasn't just leaving. He was suing for full custody of their adopted son, Roan. In court, Sharon's illness wasn't the focus. Her past was. A judge questioned her ability to parent, citing basic instinct, a decades-old scene used to define her character. Then came a wild accusation that she suggested Botox for Roan's feet to stop odor. Sharon denied it, but the court already made its judgment. She lost. The boy who saved her life was taken from her. She was granted visitation. Nothing more. Financial ruin followed. The $18 million she had earned over a lifetime? Gone. Her home, her phone, everything was in someone else's name. She had nothing left, and Hollywood had moved on. Scripts stopped arriving. She was too old, too broken, too controversial. The few roles she took, Catwoman, Basic Instinct 2, were panned. Tabloids mocked her. Studios ignored her. Once a box office draw, she was now invisible. The actress who once ruled red carpets was now locked out of her own industry. When Hollywood shut its doors, Sharon Stone didn't knock. She picked up a paintbrush and made her own. Art became her voice, her therapy, her rebirth. She poured her pain, survival, and brilliance onto canvas. Her work, vivid, bold, deeply emotional, was shown in San Francisco, Berlin, and soon Rome's iconic ARA Pacis Museum. But her comeback wasn't just artistic. She became a fierce advocate for HIV/AIDS research, raising over $34 million. She spoke for women, for children, for anyone discarded by the system, and eventually the world began to listen again. In 2024, the Turin Film Festival honored her legacy. In 2025, she returned to Nobody 2 and In Memoriam, not as a fantasy, but as a force. Off-screen, she rebuilt her life. Adopted 2 more sons, Laird and Quinn. Once robbed of motherhood, she became the anchor of a new family. She didn't ask for a second chance. She created one. And this time, she didn't need Hollywood to define her. She had already won. Sharon Stone was once the most desired woman in Hollywood, and the most discarded. She was idolized, then objectified, celebrated, then erased. She lost her health, her career, her child, and her identity, all while the world watched and said nothing. But she didn't fade. She didn't beg. She rose. Not because someone gave her a second chance, but because she took it. She rebuilt her body, her voice, her family, and her legacy with the kind of strength that doesn't make headlines, but rewrites history. Today, Sharon Stone is no longer the fantasy Hollywood once packaged. She's a mother, an artist, an activist, a survivor. She is proof that you can lose everything and still come back stronger than anyone thought possible. And maybe that's the real story here. Not that Sharon Stone was ever perfect, but that she was never finished. If Sharon Stone's story moved you, if her fight, her fall, and her rise reminded you of your own strength, then don't scroll away. Like the video to show support. Subscribe to hear more untold stories of legends who refuse to disappear. And drop a comment below. What would you fight to come back from? This isn't just Hollywood history. This is what it means to survive.